Hello, and welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today I'm going to be bringing you the history of the Dominion Building. So the Dominion Building, where I am currently, where the museum now resides, also known as the Old Post Office, was first built in 1904. But let's look a little bit about how it came to be. So during the fur trade era, the mail was delivered by the voyageurs to the fur trading posts. So in 1783, the Northwest Company set up a post on the South Shore. And you can learn a little bit more of that in some of our past episodes. And then, so in 1796, the fur trading post moved to the North Shore, where the Algoma sort of conservatory and the Canal District sort of now stand today. And so in 1821, the Hudson's Bay Company took over from the Northwest Company, and the post and mail continued to be delivered there until about 1858. So at that time, David Pym was one of the Sioux's first official postmaster, or more so the first official civilian postmaster. So the post office was thus moved from the Hudson's Bay Post to the Old Stone House Hotel. And the Pyms were the postmasters for about 50 years. So David Pym was the postmaster up until his death in 1870, and then Margaret took over, and she stayed around until about 1890. And around that time, they moved the old post office to an old schoolhouse. And with the arrival of Mr. Clerg and his industries, it started to really help grow the town rapidly. And with that, it sort of increased the demand for this larger post office. So in 1902, the Sioux received $20,000 from the Dominion government, so the government of Canada, to build a new post office. The post office moved temporarily into the library building, and then land was purchased at the corner of Queen Street and East Street, much to the dismay of the West End residents. However, the land was chosen as it had a winter road access across the ice to Sioux, Michigan. So it just helped with all the mail delivery. In 1903, Dr. W.A. Adams was appointed postmaster, as the job demanded more time than the postal inspector felt Margaret could give. And also Margaret was like 70 years old at the time. On May 1st, 1904, construction for the post office began. It is said that the lower stone portion of the building was made of the squared rubble sandstone obtained from John Coulter's farm on Baseline. It was also said to be purchased for $75 and a bottle of whiskey. In early spring 1905, construction began on the clock tower. Windows were added to the clock tower, as the clock would not arrive for several more years from England. So if you come and check out the museum and go into the Skylight Gallery, one of the windows in our Skylight Gallery is a nice big round window, and that is one of the original windows that used to be in the clock tower before the clock arrived. The building, which would be called the Dominion Building for the Dominion government, who gave us the money to construct the building, was mostly completed in autumn 1905. There was only sort of the electrical work that remained, but due to issues and delays, the building took several more months to be ready for occupancy. So the building was officially opened on March 29th, 1906. The Dominion building housed the post office on the first floor, in what is now our Durham Gallery, and also the front office space here and our military gallery. And then the back part of the first floor, where we have our offices and some of our archives, as well as the whole second floor were different government offices. And then the third floor was an apartment for the caretaker and his family. And so there is sort of the intro into the Dominion building. And so this next part, we're actually going to be looking at what was sort of, or should I say even who was here throughout the history. And we're going to start with when we first opened. So we had the General Post Office with W.A. Adams, MD, as postmaster, the Customs House with Henry Pilgrim as the collector, the Inland Revenue Office with Lieutenant Colonel T.H. Elliott, DY collector, the Fisheries Inspector, A.G. Duncan, the Indian agent, William L. Nichols, and Patrick J. Racine, who was the janitor, or, well, caretaker. And so in 1907, it's listed as the exact same. And then in 1908, we see everything is pretty much listed as the same, except we now have Mrs. M.J. Murray as a music teacher. Moving into 1909, we still have Post Office, Customs, Inland Revenue, Fisheries, Indian Agent, Patrick J. Racine as the caretaker, and then we also have John White listed. So not really sure why he is listed here, whether he has an office in the building, or maybe even at a time they were renting out another one of the caretaker rooms upstairs. Maybe Patrick Racine didn't really have a big family, so they were able to rent out another one of the rooms, and that's why we have John White listed here. Going into 1910, we still have Post Office with W.A. Adams as the postmaster, Customs House with Henry Plummer as the collector, the Inland Revenue Office still has Lieutenant Colonel T.H. Elliott as the DY collector, the Fisheries Inspector was still A.G. Duncan, the Indian Agent was still William L. Nichols, Patrick Racine was still the caretaker. But then we also have the Algoma Rifles headquarters added in here. So the Algoma Rifles were in here for a number of years. And then we have John W. White still listed, Henry Plummer, Mrs. A.C. Vicker. So because we have Henry Plummer listed here, I'm wondering if maybe it's people who have offices here, not just people who are also living here. So I am getting all of this information from our directories. So with this, they just list every sort of office or resident who is sort of there, and this would be what they would fill out for the phone book company, the directory company. So it's not entirely clear if maybe some of these people were using it as residents or offices, but this is just the information that we have listed. So that's why sometimes it's a little bit confusing. But moving on to 1911, we still have Post Office, Customs, Inland Revenue, Fisheries, Indian Agent, but here we don't have the name listed anymore, at least for the Indian agent. Then we have Patrick J. Racine still as the janitor, the Algoma Rifles headquarters, John White, Henry Plummer, and Mrs. A.C. Vicker. Moving on to 1912, we still have Post Office, Customs, Inland. Then it actually changes name to the Dominion Fisheries Inspector. So here we're getting a little bit more formal, but we are also seeing it is now in the hands of Thomas J. Foster. Then we have Indian agent Patrick J. Racine as the caretaker, Algoma Rifles headquarters, Henry Plummer, and Mrs. A.C. Vicker. So it seems that John White has moved out. 1913, Post Office, and then we have the Immigration Office now moving in, the Customs House, Inland Revenue, and the Dominion Fisheries. Indian agent now listed as A.D. McNabb. Then we have Patrick, Algoma Rifles, and Mrs. A.C. Vicker. 1914, and so here is also where we're starting into the war, but I would say this information is so if we're looking at 1914, I would say this is a little bit more representative of maybe what was there in 1913, because it was in 1913 that they would have filled this out for the coming year. So here we have the Public Works of Canada, led by W.J. Fuller, who was the district engineer. Then the Post Office was still with W.A. Adams, the Immigration Office, Customs House still with Henry Plummer, the Inland Revenue Office still with Lieutenant Colonel T.H. Elliott as a district collector, and then Dominion Fisheries Inspector still with Thomas J. Foster, the Indian agent as A.D. McNabb, Patrick J. Racine, and Mrs. A.C. Vicker. 1915, Public Works, Post Office, Immigration, Customs, Inland Revenue, Dominion Fisheries, Indian agent Patrick Racine, and Mrs. A.C. Vicker. 1916, Public Works, and then Post Office, Immigrations, Customs. We also see the introduction of weights and measurements, and this was led by Edward McKay, who was the assistant inspector, Indian agent, then Patrick J. Racine. Then 1917, Public Works, Post Office, Immigration, Customs, weight and measurements, and then we have Indian agent, and here we have a change of John Cormier as the janitor, or well, caretaker. So here we are introduced to a new caretaker. 1918, Public Works, Post Office, Immigration, Customs, weight and measures, Indian agent, and John Cormier. And in 1918, we actually see where it's just listing the office titles and not who is the head of the office. So we're sort of cutting down on the amount of text was there. 1919, Public Works of Canada, Post Office, Immigration Office, Customs House, Weights and Measures Office, Indian Agent, and John Cormier, Janitor. And it is the exact same in 1920. And then when we get into 1921, it changes just a little bit. So we still have the public works, the post office, immigration, but the customs house and the inland revenue actually seem to have merged. So it's now the customs house and inland revenue. So they sort of have joined into one. And then we have the weights and measures office, and then the Indian agent and John Cormier again. And in 1922, it sort of changes once again. So still public works, post office, immigration, and the customs house is now the customs house and excise department. Then we have the weights and measures office, Indian agent, and John Cormier. Then in 1923, still exactly the same. 1924, it sort of changes once again, just a tiny little bit. So now instead of saying custom house, it just is custom and excise department. So here we're sort of refining sort of some of the names of these special departments and getting a little bit more maybe official. And then when we go into 1925, still pretty much the same, except for John Cormier is now finally listed as the caretaker. And also the weights and measures office has also disappeared. So it's just public works, post office, immigration, custom and excise department, Indian agent, and then our caretaker. 1926, exactly the same. 1927, it's the names sort of change a little bit again. Public Works of Canada, Post Office, Immigration Office, and now the Customs and Excise Department, National Revenue. So I don't know what was up with that group. For a while, it seemed like they could not get their names straight. Then we have Indian agent, John Cormier, caretaker. 1928, still exactly the same. 1929, it's exactly the same as well as, and that carries on into 30, 31, and then when we get into 32, it does change. So we have Public Works of Canada, Post Office, Immigration Office, Customs, Excise Department, National Revenue, Indian Agent, so all that's the same, but we have now Roy McClelland as the caretaker. And then it changes again a little bit in 1933, so still Public Works, Post Office, Immigration Office, Customs and Excise, Department of National Revenue, Inspector and Collector. So again, they're changing their name a little bit. Indian Agent, and here is also where we start to see the Royal Canadian Mounted Police setting up office in here as well. So the RCMP were established here in our building for a while as well. And so we have 34, 35, 36, and 36 that were all pretty much the same. 37, it changes a little bit because we have the addition of the Department of Mines and Resources added as well. 38, it is still exactly the same. 39, same. 40, it is the same 41. It does change a little bit here. So we have the Post Office, the Department of Mines and Resources, Customs and Excise Department, National Revenue, Inspector and Collector, Indian Agent, RCMP, and then here we have the Unemployment Insurance Commission, or Employment and Claims Offices, and then Roy McClelland as caretaker. In 42, it's the same. 43, it changes a little bit. Post Office, Department of Mines and Resources, Customs, Excise Department, National Revenue, Inspector and Collector, Indian Agent, RCMP. Then it changes to Employment and Selective Services, and then Roy McClelland, caretaker. 44 is the same. 45, 46 is the same. And then we're getting into 47, 48, and here's where it changes a little bit again. Post Office, Department of Mines and Resources, Customs and Excise Department, National Revenue, Indian Agent, RCMP, National Employment Service, and Roy McClelland, caretaker. And then we move on into 1949, and this is where we say goodbye to the post office. So with the city continuing to grow, the post office once again needed a larger space. So in 1949, they moved to 451 Queen Street East, which is across from the courthouse, and that's where they still are today. Then we move on to 1950. So in 1950, we have the Indian Agent, the National Employment Service, and Roy McClelland, caretaker. In 1951-52, we have the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, and this was the immigration branch. And then the Department of Citizenship and Immigration and the Indian Affairs branch, the Veterans Land Act, the Indian Agent, the National Employment Service, and Roy McClelland, caretaker. And then in 53, 54, it's the exact same. In 1955, 1956, it changes just a bit. So the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, the Immigration Branch, as well as the Indian Affairs Branch, the Veterans Land Act, Indian Agent, and then the National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, the Fisheries Research Board of Ontario, and Department of Fisheries. And then we also have now Alfred Thibault as the caretaker. In 1957, once again, a little bit more of a change. Department of Citizenship and Immigration, Immigration Branch, as well as the Indian Affairs Branch, Veterans Land Act, Indian Agent, then also now the Indian Health Services, National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, Fisheries Research Board of Ontario, Department of Fisheries, and then Alfred Thibault as caretaker. So in 1959, we have the Radio Inspector, the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, just the Indian Affairs Branch now, the Trans-Canada Highway Division, Indian Agent, Indian Health Service, National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, the Department of Fisheries, and Alfred Thibault as the caretaker. In 1961, we have again the Radio Inspector, Indian Affairs Branch, Trans-Canada Highway Division, Indian Agent, Department of Health and Welfare, Indian and Northern Health Services Division, the National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, and Department of Fisheries. And also we now have Harvey Martin as caretaker. in 1963. So here you'll start seeing that we're skipping a little bit over a year. So we missed 1960, 1962, and we're going to be missing 1964. And that's just because, unfortunately, we don't have copies of these city directories. But if you happen to have copies of these directories at home, these old Vernon City directories, please consider donating to them to the museum, because we are missing a couple of years, so we would really like to be able to fill in these blanks. But yes, as I was saying, 1963, we have the radio inspector, then it's just listed as vacant offices. Department of Engineering branch, a National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, Department of Fisheries, and Harvey D. Martin as caretaker. So in 1965, we have the radio inspector, still listed as vacant offices, the Department of Engineering branch, the National Employment Service, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, Fisheries Research Board, and Harvey D. Martin as caretaker. And now in 1966, some of the offices actually began to use the side entrance on East Street. And so as they were using this as their main entrance, the addresses of some of the businesses started to change. So we had some using addresses of Queen Street and some using addresses as East Street. So it would be 690 Queen Street East, as we are still today. But then the ones who were on East Street were using 107 East Street. And if you look, kind of tilt you guys around right here, this window right here, if you look at the side of our building, it has stairs leading up to it. So this would have been one of the side doorways, and then there's one a little further down, and those were the some of the side entrances that they would have used off of East Street. So 1966, those listed on Queen Street were the radio regulators, then still vacant offices, the Department of Engineering branch, Canada Manpower Center, Weights and Measures Inspection Service, Fisheries Research Board, and Harvey D. Martin as caretaker. Then those listed on East Street were the Unemployment Insurance Commission. So 1967 on Queen Street were the radio regulators, vacant offices, Fisheries Research Board, and Harvey D. Martin as caretaker. East Street was Unemployment Insurance Commission, Department of Energy, Mines and Resources, and more so the Inland Waters branch. Then 1968 on Queen Street, we had the radio regulators. I try to say that several times fast. I'm already having trouble saying it just right now. Vacant offices, Fisheries Research Board, and Harvey D. Martin as caretaker. And then the East Street was just listed as a side entrance. Then in 1969 on Queen Street, we only had Harvey D. Martin as caretaker listed. On the East Street side, we had the Department of Energy, Mines and Resources. 1970 on Queen Street, we still only had caretaker. And then on East Street was still Department of Mines and Energy, and that would be the same for 1971. In 1972, on Queen Street, we still have Harvey Martin as a caretaker listed, but East Street changes to the Department of the Environment, Inland Waters Branch, Water Survey of Canada, and that would be the same for 73, 74, But then in 1975, both addresses are listed as vacant. Unfortunately, we don't have 1976, but 1977 we have it listed as vacant under Queen Street, and then East Street is just listed as side entrance. 1978, there's no mention of the building whatsoever on Queen Street, but the East Street side, so 107 East Street, is listed as the Canadian Employment Immigration Commission, Public Works Canada. 1979, again, no mention of the building whatsoever. East Street is Canadian Immigration Centre, Canadian Employment Immigration Commission, and Public Works of Canada. And then in 1980, still the same for both sides, and that's going to be the same for 1981. 1982 changes a little bit, so still on Queen Street, no mention of the building whatsoever. East Street, we have Canadian Immigration Centre, the Canadian Employment Immigration Commission, Public Works Canada, NU Fisheries and Marine Service storage area. And so then unfortunately we don't have 1983, but in 1984 on Queen Street, there's no mention of the building whatsoever. But for 107 East Street, we do finally have the listing of Sault Ste. Marie Museum. So we officially moved into this building in 1983. We opened at the end of the year in 1983. And so you could sort of see getting into kind of like that 70s, 80s era. There wasn't really too much in this building. They weren't really using it. The space wasn't full. There was a lot of vacancies. And so with this, people were kind of realizing that, okay, well, this building isn't really being used to its full potential. So we had some very good, influential people who are able to help us move out of the old armories into this new building. So 1952, we moved into the new armories building as the Sault Ste. Marie and 49th Regiment RCA Historical Society. So that's with the two sort of historical societies merging together and creating this local museum. But very quickly we outgrew this space, and so it was just really lucky that we were finally able to get this building and come and move in here. And so there is still the museum in the armories if you want to go check theirs out. But yeah, that's the history of the Dominion building and everybody who was in here before us. So I hope you enjoyed this little bit of information of what was here in this building. Do you remember any of these offices that were here before us? Let me know. So as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Did you know you can get unlimited admission to the Sault Ste. Marie Museum for a whole year for just $15? Yep, that's right. And there's more perks to that too. Go to Sault Museum, that's SAULT museum.ca, under visit and learn more about our membership options. And if you're a business, corporate or nonprofit, we have plans for you too. Reach out to us by emailing info@saultmuseum.ca with any inquiries.